Greetings, dear ones. Today is the 14th. I erroneously posted that this was going to be going live on the 13th of January, Friday the 13th. I guess I'm wanting some good luck for me and my family. The 13th of a Friday is good luck instead of, in some families and cultures and traditions, it is not good luck. So here we are today, already a couple weeks into 2022. And for me, it feels like it's already been 2 months. So much going on, both personally and planetarily, almost daily. We are looking at the opportunities for more shifting and changing, and what is normally named turmoil and chaos are actually constant opportunities popping up for new choices. And certainly science brings that to us. The reason this was titled today, Science, Nature, and Oneness, is that, as many of you know who have been listening to these Ancient Future Wisdom episodes over the past couple and a half years, or have worked with me, you know that because of my background in science, I am constantly receiving articles and journal reports, etc. And I am just struck every single week over the past couple of years, not small breakthroughs and little, oh, this is, really interesting, but huge, turn our world upside down discoveries and realizations and adjustments to what we know in almost every discipline of science. And it's not just science allows us the knowledge to be able to not only be aware of our world, but to make the choices, to quote Greg Braden, who is someone who for over 30 years has bridged science and spirituality. Please look for him, his information. He has many books, I think 11 different books, and tons of YouTube videos that really help understand the bridge between science and spirituality. And to quote him, he says, "When the facts are clear, our choices are obvious." But we really have to be very honest and aware of what those facts are. And the suppression of facts, science, knowledge, goes back many, many, many hundreds of years, if not more, actually more, because the Catholic Church was very instrumental in not only persecuting and eliminating knowledge by eliminating the scientist. In those days they were called alchemists, but also the suppression of that knowledge, the burning of books, and not only of ancient knowledge. When going into a culture, in order to completely conquer a culture, one needs to decimate their knowledge, their spiritual base, all that that culture is built upon. And certainly when we're talking about ancient cultures in Latin America and other places around the world, that suppression and attempt to completely eliminate the information and the knowledge that that culture had gleaned over centuries was pretty effective. There's very little that remains. And the continued suppression of facts and information, the covering up of, the lessening, the impact, oh, that's not really important, oh, that's, a minor discovery, or that information isn't worthy of being in the mainstream. Now, there are motivations and agendas for that. But in order to change any problem, we have to be honest with ourselves, and that's culturally, societally, and personally. If we're not really willing to look at the facts of our relationships, of our individual beliefs, and how we arrived at those beliefs and perceptions about ourselves and about the world, then it makes it very, very difficult to make any changes. Certainly, my clients over the years, when working with them, the revelation of themselves to themselves, of really what is under and behind much of the choices that they make, or lack of choices. One feels that one doesn't have those choices. When working with a client yesterday, she grew up in a family where all members were kind of pushing an agenda in regard to her, and she grew up believing certain things about herself, and that therefore she is constantly fighting against circumstances and conditions and situations in her life, and seeing the repeating patterns. Now, as she has explored inward in the process that I've created for clients, she has discovered that really those lies that she came to believe are coloring her ability to have the freedom that she wants in her career, in her relationships, in her finances, in her everyday. She's coming to realize that when she trusts that inner information, because she's feeling it now, and utilizes that. She's a scientist, as a matter of fact, so she blends that with her knowledge, fact-based information, and has wonderful experiences now, wonderful surprises, wonderful occurrences, and that is true of us as a world, as a society. The necessity of asking, like some of the discoveries that are coming forward at this point in time are asking us to truly change our thinking. The Big Bang is no longer true about the beginning of our universe. How in archaeology and anthropology, how tribes moved across the world, where they originated from, etc., has been completely proven erroneous. The time frame when humans, Homo sapiens, began to exist, that too has been proven completely different timing than what has been believed for many, many decades, if not hundreds of years. So this suppression of science is nothing new, but what is new is that we, as the people of the world, have access through the internet directly to the information, directly to the facts, directly to the evidence. And yes, can facts be colored, modified, distorted, depending on the way a science experiment or observation is set up, or even because of the beliefs of the observer? We know this. But when that same experiment or same observation is being observed on two different places on the planet, or by different disciplines of science, then we have to use that as a basis for where we're going to go, what we're going to do with that information. Certainly we experience that on a daily basis. You know, we use science. If you bake cookies at all, if you bake cakes, you're using science. Everything that we live with in is based in levels and aspects from different disciplines of science. And we're coming to a point in our scientific knowledge where, depending on how we choose to create policies, how we choose to make changes in our lives, will determine whether humanity continues to exist on this planet, frankly. And that is a longer term view, which most science has as its basis. It's not just an immediate response or benefit or satisfactory, conclusion, but it is now one tiny step to go forward and to continue the exploration. And that is, we're at a point where our decisions based in morals, ethics, spirituality, and acknowledgement of the interdependence and interconnectedness of all things is going to determine whether we continue in the old forms, the old ways of society, where not only is there a very small group of people who have the financial majority of the planet, but also have control of the resources upon which we are basing our world. And these are unrenewable resources. So they have a finite amount that is available to us on this planet. And as you know, in the grocery stores, when supply lowers, prices raise. So if there is less and less and less on the planet, and there's very few that have control of the amount that is left, then we are all held in a state of oppression and control. This is the basis for many thousands of years. We're at a tipping point where we can create a world where everyone can benefit, everyone can have access to scientific advances and be able to do so not at the cost of every other living being on the planet. Which brings us to the nature part of this title today. To my great sadness, 3 of nature scientist giants passed away within the past few weeks. One on Christmas Day, one the next day, and one, I believe it was a week or so afterwards, or within 2 weeks. Those giants were named Thomas Lovejoy, who was a conservation biologist, and he's the one that coined the term biodiversity. And then there was Edward O. Wilson, who is considered a modern-day Darwin and worked for decades to explore and discover the origins of man and how that benefited so many other sciences, so many other disciplines. The other was Richard Leakey, who was a Kenyan conservationist, and he really fought so strongly for an awareness of Africa and and particularly Kenya, of its resources, of its environment, and how things interact, and raising up of those peoples. One quote from a beautiful article about them said that they show things in a bigger way to see patterns of what we do. And that's one of the main reasons of science, is to see the patterns within what is going on around us so that we can learn from them, which is exactly what we do in individual sessions, is looking for those patterns, identifying those patterns, the sources of the patterns, how those patterns colored different areas of your life. And actually in sessions, we go back and not only identify, but undo those patterns and redo them. My oracle card I pulled today was Rewrite the Past. Now, that is what science is attempting to do. If we continue on the path that we have been over all of these millennia, we are going to end up in a place where the suffering continues, starvation continues, the elimination of precious land masses, precious animals, precious plants that are needed for the entire life circle to continue. There is an incredible interdependence, interconnectedness, interwoven lives. And when that, as I've spoken about before, when that circle is broken by eliminating a certain species or plant species or animal species, then the cycle does not continue, and it directly affects us. Nothing that we do, nothing that we use every day is in a vacuum. It comes from somewhere. Even our believed renewable sources of energy, solar and wind, well, in order to build those wind mills, those turbo turbines, the material that's used, the construction thereof, all of this actually uses unrenewable sources, fossil fuels. The solar panels and what they're made of, where they are obtained, our interconnectedness from country to country is again being shown by the pandemic. We aren't getting certain supplies of ingredients, whether it's for food or whether it's particular resources, minerals, metals from countries that are rich in that. And if it's not getting across the world to another country that utilizes it to put together the, let's say, the technology piece, then we don't have chips, for example, in our computers. And so it's one thing combined with another, not to mention the social aspect. In order to mine many of these minerals for, you know, the creation of what appears to be green energy, the electric cars, the vehicles, all of the batteries that are built, that we get wonderful results, wonderful energy from, again, in the construction, and now not to mention the elimination of them, the disposal of them. What do you do with solar panels when they are no longer useful, when they are no longer working, or they're outmoded or outdated? Where do they go? They do not break down, so they're going to landfills. So with wind and solar and hydro energy, we are only benefiting from the actual, when it's functioning, because the production and the disposal thereof is completely detrimental. Which brings us to, again, some of the information regarding the effects of climate change. We all hear about it, but how does that actually affect? Well, it affects our weather. And when it affects our weather, it affects our source of water, for example. California has been seeing this for the past several years, this horrific drought. It's not just about the drought. The snow from the mountains is not sufficient to replenish the water supply that is being used. Why is there not enough snow? Well, that has a lot to do with changing weather patterns, wildfires, etc. All around the world, the snow is not being produced. It's such an intricate, intimately intertwined system, and we're kind of stamping all over it and destroying it, much like, the image comes in of an ant hill. And when we're, it's a very intricate and very powerful environment to observe, is how ants work with one another, or how bees work with one another, and how delicate their system is. And when we come in and, knock over the beehives, or eliminate places where those bees can source their nectar from, because we've changed it over to other land purposes, we are really shooting ourselves not only in the foot, but in much more vital organs at this point. And we have incredible sources through people's imagination and minds that have created so much of what we live from now. But if that education system isn't in place, if the support and the acknowledgement and the respect and financial remuneration isn't there for scientists, then children aren't going to go down those avenues and study. And certainly that's true of, again, reflection of our society. It has been a very white men dominated world, the science world, but that has been changing. And one of these giants that I spoke of was very instrumental in bringing forward people of color. And when he was working in Africa, Leakey brought education and the idea of discovery of how to farm better, all kinds of things that has completely reconstructed the world of science and the excitement about science in that country alone. Another, I think it was Wilson, who was very forthright and instrumental in bringing women into the picture. I happened to watch the Aeronauts this week, a movie, very enjoyable. Eddie Redmayne and Felicity Hunt, I'm not sure her name. But in any case, it was about balloonists, based on true events of balloonists taking huge risks to be able to measure the atmosphere, and thereby creating meteorology that we all depend on as we look at the news every day. What's going to happen tomorrow with the weather? What's going to happen that weekend that I have a party planned? This is a science. And before a certain point in time, it wasn't even recognized as a science. So that's what the movie was generally about. But interestingly, they switched it and put a woman in a role that at that point in time, science would absolutely not permit. There were times prior to that women could have been semi-involved, but at that point in time, science was attempting to establish itself as a respectable and financially worthy discipline in academia. And so they kind of shut the doors at that point in time to women. So while it was an enjoyable movie, and it's wonderful that in the industry of film, there has been more opportunity for women in such roles, the suppression of the truth actually ultimately harms more than helps. And this is the suppression of information, suppression of history, and how that actually has colored the policies and choices that we're making now. There have been so many recent discoveries and scientific breakthroughs, as I mentioned at the top of this session today, that it would take hours just to read the titles. But just to bring you a little bit, I'm just going to read out some of the titles that came across from one source this week across my desk, and that's in wide ranges. This is just in regard to the Earth. It says, this one was dated yesterday, swapping a single food item per day can make diets way more planet friendly. And that has a lot to do with beef. And if you'll notice, right now, we're having challenges getting beef on the shelves here in the United States. And while, that may be uncomfortable, and it's being put down to surges in Omicron variant of COVID, snowstorms that are not allowing transportation, a decrease in the number of truck drivers. There's, multiple observable reasons why. But when we look to the deeper spiritual reason, the potential to really be aware on an individual basis of where your meat comes from and how it is produced. Industrial farming that is a level of cruelty to animals that would bring tears to your eyes if you really saw or heard the details. And this is an opportunity for us, particularly in this country where we consume so much beef. Is this the way we want to continue? Is this the way we want to be as a society? Not only the cruelty to the animals in industrial farming, but the emissions from cows, the methane that comes from them is oftentimes far more destructive to our ozone than other things, or at least equal to. Numbers we can discuss, but the point is that it is very detrimental. Not to mention the absolute decimation of forests for grazing land. Amazon, that's what's going on in the Amazon. Millions of acres of the Amazon is being mowed down to create more grazing land for cows that are creating more methane emissions that is destroying our environment. We have to each individually become aware of what we do, the choices that we make. And that's being really, really honest with ourselves. Are we going to close our eyes to the cruelty that goes on? Are we going to continue to make choices just because we feel like it and tossing out millions of pounds of beef, unused beef, the waste that creates on all levels. It's our individual choices. We have the power. That's just one. And the suppression of the science is ultimately detrimental to ourselves, because we are stepping backwards. Again, we're talking about history, rewriting the past. We would be stepping backwards into the lesser freedoms of an individual. Even with the information surrounding COVID, the science is very, very clear. This is biology 101, and it is being distorted for purposes that have nothing to do with our health or our well-being, but again, to support an old way of control of the masses, oppression of the masses, suppression. And science brings freedom, our ability to understand and appreciate nature, the realization that every plant and every tree and every animal has a purpose, just like every person has a purpose. In your immediate area, it's not like these things are so far off that we cannot do anything about them. In your immediate neighborhood, I keep seeing more and more clear cutting. And what that does is the animals and the creatures and the insects, the microbes that depend on that copse of trees or a little, or a few acres of forest or just trees or swamp or whatever the environment may be, eliminates the continuation of that life cycle. Just in my area, the reduction in the amount of creatures, deer, raccoons, skunks, opossums, all of these are vital parts to our immediate environment. And when the plants and trees are taken down and only decorative, less labor-intensive, less messy trees are replace them, then we don't have the ability for those animals to continue. We build roads across pathways where these animals can go and breed. And just like with people, if we, again, this is why there is a law to marrying relatives, so there is not inbreeding. And that's what's happening in our very neighborhoods. Raccoons are being pushed out because the large trees that they live in are being cut down. The old growth is being cut down. They don't have access to the woods that are, a half a mile away because there's highways and roadways in between. And so how are they going to breed? How are they going to continue? Everything is interdependent. And when we understand the science, we understand and can appreciate nature, not just the beautiful aspects of nature, but the intricate and very, very interdependent aspects that we live on, from, and depend upon. There's so much more that we could discuss, bring forward. This is a subject for hours and hours of discussion, and I'd love feedback from anyone who tapped into this, either live or at a later point, what your experience is, what your view is, and open a discussion for perhaps another time. But one of the most impactful of all discoveries over the past couple years is that both quantum physics and classical physics have come to the realization or the awareness that the whole universe could be a neural network, which brings us to the third word in the title for today's episode, the oneness. That neural network that spiritually many traditions speak of as a oneness or a wholeness is being proven by science, which means that your thoughts, your actions, your words, your feelings, your presence, your being, your growth, your maturity and responsibility, which comes with the freedom of knowledge and awareness, makes a difference every moment of the day. You are designing our future. We are designing our future. And as I quoted Greg Braden, when the facts are clear, our choices become obvious. When we're aware of our own reasoning, what's going on, why we're making the choices that we're making, then it becomes obvious what you must do, whether it's make a change in your career, become more interconnected with your spiritual tradition and nature and the spiritual beingness within all things. I'm sorry, just as a hawk is flying by, which for me and for many is a significant sign that great vision is being spoken of, or awareness, or truth. So always a messenger. And choice, as I said, when we have the knowledge, when the knowledge is clear, the choices become obvious. When we make choices, we have freedom. Or when we have freedom, we can make choices. So I encourage you to, open your Google, whatever area of science may be attracting you, and just explore a bit. Look beyond the mainstream information that comes through our nightly news and little bites of information. Explore some of the ways in which the advancements are going to be making your life easier, but at what cost? One of the things that aspects of nature that has been very, very strong over the past week, 10 days, almost actually it's been 2 weeks or more, is the element of fire. And not only because of the recent discoveries about the sun, we have gotten closer to the sun than we ever even thought possible. We also have a country on the planet, China, who has created an artificial sun that is, let me get the number correct, it is 5 times hotter than our sun, our planet, the sun. And there was a recent star detected that has the energy, that emitted the energy in a fraction of a second what our sun creates in 100,000 years. Now, this isn't just great news or just, wow, that's interesting. But again, leads to our ability to utilize and tap in some of these sources of energy that will not only maintain and continue our world and benefit us and allow us as a species to grow in conjunction with, in cooperation with, in collaboration with nature and its cycles and rhythms. But furthermore, it allows us to truly feel the depth of that interconnectedness and oneness, which really allows us to know our significance, come to know our soul's purpose. That's what happens in sessions with people. They become so transformed and transmuting. Those patterns become so free and significantly aware of their purpose on a deep spiritual basis. And again, no surprise that owls have been showing up throughout this week. Owls representing deception and darkness, keeping things in darkness, and the silence in the dark, which is, kind of what's going on behind the scenes by suppressing information that would benefit each and every one of us. So we have this big mix of disciplines of science and advancements and discoveries and nature being so intimately and exquisitely interdependent and interwoven with our lives, and that knowledge allows us more freedom, and the reasons for suppression of that knowledge, just as we individually attempt, each of us, to suppress the knowledge, the innate knowledge within us. We all get little inklings, little teeny glimpses of when we're in a certain situation and we really should make a change. But our defense systems suppress that information in an attempt to control us, to keep us safe. But in fact, it does the opposite, because that defense system doesn't know that we are now mature adults that can handle those large emotions. We are mature adults that can handle the facts of science and have the right to choose, have the necessity to choose, have the privilege to choose. And that's what happens individually as people go through this process of one-on-one sessions. That you now have ownership of self and freedom to participate, to bring your soul purpose forward and make the difference that you chose to come here and do. So we have all of this in the mix. These wonderful giants of nature science who brought forth so much and continue to do so, and by their legacies. We have ice in its water element in its form of ice has been very, very present. The discovery of certain fish in Antarctic and how deep below the surface they form little nests to be able to procreate, and the lack of oxygen at that level again is teaching us. Ice shelves are falling away, enabling us to study much more, but causing detriment that may be irreversible. So that's part of the mix today, as well as owl, the wisdom that comes from seeing in the dark, from having the ability to open our eyes wide to the facts, to information, to who we are individually, collectively, and who we choose to be. So those of you who are energy sensitive have been feeling kind of a building or a movement in this large container that we created, the sacred geometry of which was set in prior to this episode. And if you simply allow yourself to find your sits bones and sit deeply in your chair or couch or on the floor, whatever you may be seated upon, and just bring your shoulder blades just a little bit down, just drop them a little bit and bring them together, and that will allow you to let go and permit your skeletal system to hold you up, so you don't have to hold yourself up in the chair, as we all generally do with our energy. We bring it upward. And just let the energetics swirl around you, within you. Nothing you need do in this process of energetic practice or deep dive. Not exactly a meditation, because more often than not meditation is going up and out or through the third eye. And in this process, I encourage you to simply allow your body, your energy field, your wider self, which is a direct channel to your soul, and your guides and teachers and masters, to assist in bringing you down and within your internal world, your inner verse, and how all that I've mentioned and all that is going on scientifically, the advances, nature, the advances in knowledge about nature, how this may be directly touching on, affecting your daily life, yes, but moreover, how the suppression of knowledge in you as an individual affects your immediate day-to-day life. As I mentioned earlier, that suppression excuse me, of innate knowledge, internal wisdom, keeping yourself in the dark, how that allows us as individuals to stay in situations that we know are unhealthy, whether it's a job, relationship, or in our own bodies. This internal knowledge comes directly from your wider knowledge self. And as you grow in awareness and choice making, as a result of transforming or transmuting patterns within, there is more of you present in your life's purpose, your soul's purpose. For as we have more knowledge about our world and the cosmos, which interacts directly with our planet, allowing us as a species to be more present and purposeful, not only in our ability to continue as a species, but what kind of species? Destructive or constructive? In this moment, in this practice, in this energetic practice, within this large container of information, knowledge, the opening of avenues, avenues for discovery, simply allow. No work, no effort, no focus, no intention, no push, but simply allow for the revelation of your internal knowledge. Not your mind. Try to let go of the need to focus or even understand or follow my words. I'm simply continuing to speak so that you don't have to wonder whether the recording is going, but primarily because as I'm speaking, I'm transmitting the energetics that are within this container to benefit your body, mind, energy field, but not merely a uniform energetic to fit everyone, But when you're in this container, the exquisitely individualized energetics that are just right for you at this moment in time, to benefit you in your search for knowledge, be it in your own immediate life and or how your life touches, affects, is affected by so many aspects of nature, and the many disciplines of science that our everyday lives depend upon, are based upon, benefit from. There is not one discipline of science that you are not interconnected with on a daily basis. And to realize that you have the power to determine not only by the life choices you make, whether it's purchasing something or choosing to not purchase something, but the decisions that are made in every level of government, you choose, you decide, you determine the future. And that's merely on a 3D level. For as you come to have more of you and feel into the interconnectedness and interdependence of all aspects of this planet and other people, the choice of what to think, what to believe, how to act, not only colors but reweaves what science is labeling a neural network, what spiritual traditions have referred to as a web of life, lattice upon which our universe forms into matter, or simply an acknowledgement of oneness, that everything is made up of the same stuff. Atoms, energy, whatever term you wish to use. Leads to that oneness. And you are not only part of that oneness, but you determine how that oneness manifests, physicalizes, materializes. You are that significant. You matter that much. You play that significant a part. You are purposefully here. At the most crucial of all moments in human history. Which makes you pretty special, to say the least. And I wish in my work and my purpose is always to guide, assist, reveal you to you, to not only know that, but to know it deep within you, in a knowing that nothing can shake. A being what you know yourself to be. And the sound of a hawk on the music channel I'm listening to. So if you would like to explore more of who you are, discover more of the universe within you, I will be doing an all-day retreat on the 29th for you to have a little taste of the upcoming group program and or individual programs that are much accelerated and allow you to quickly move through those old patterns and transmute them to live more fully. Your purposeful life, or purpose-filled life. The energetic container that is here is wondrous and magnificent and beautiful. And I would love to continue, or allow you to continue, if you so choose, to sit in this. Please know that you will be completely and utterly integrated whenever you do choose to come back to a more physical experience. And should you so choose, please join me on the 29th, and, or better still, let's connect and find what is the most ideal method of your self-discovery and therefore freedom. As always, it is with the deepest of honor, gratitude, and love for your presence on the planet. Until next time, next Friday, be well.